Assalamu alaikum, sister. Welcome back to the Heartful Awakening podcast. I'm your host, Maria, and today we're going to be talking about something that I wish somebody had taught me 10 years ago. The difference between sabr and self-destruction. Because here's the truth that most Muslim women don't know. Suffering does not make you pious in and of itself. And staying in an uncomfortable situation doesn't always make you strong. Sometimes staying is just self-betrayal that's disguised as patience. And if you've ever wondered whether your patience is bringing you closer to Allah or it's destroying you from the inside out, this episode is for you. So grab your tea, find a quiet spot, and let's talk about what real sabr actually looks like. Let me tell you a story. This is my story. I stayed in a marriage for almost 5 years. It was like 4 years and 10 months in. And for most of that time, I was crying myself to sleep at night. I would be awake all night, thinking, overthinking, reading books on Kindle. I couldn't sleep until Fajr time. I would go to bed 1 minute before my husband's Fajr alarm went off because I didn't want him to see me crying or reading or still awake and then ask what I was doing still awake. During the day, I could barely take care of my kids because I was so emotionally exhausted from everything that was going on. I was extremely depleted. I was running on fumes. But I told myself that, I'm just having sabr. This is patience and I'll be rewarded for it. I said that, this is what a good Muslim woman does if she wants to be close to Allah, that she just deals with the struggle and that it's part of life. And I would think of the story of Asya alayhi salam, and I would remember that she put up with Fir'aun, and I said, if Asya radiallahu ta'ala anha, if she was so beloved to Allah that she was named amongst the 4 most pious women to have ever lived, and she put up with a tyrant, then clearly, even if I'm dealing with these difficulties, if I want to get closer to Allah, then I should be putting up with this stuff too, right? And I believed that, if I stayed with my husband, regardless of how I was being treated, that I was stronger than the average woman, right? That it made me better, right? And so that's why I wouldn't give up and I wouldn't fail. I thought that if I were to, be upset and put my foot down, that would mean that I'm not strong. That would mean that I gave up and that I wasn't competent enough to just put up with it and keep that patience, right? Keep that ability to put up with such difficulty. I thought that putting up with what I was going through would be my ticket to Jannah. Okay, so during that time, I tolerated things that I would be even embarrassed to say out loud right now. I was blamed for things that I never did. I wasn't allowed to go to appointments. If I had an appointment that was important, I would be called selfish, right? I had my belongings taken away or thrown into the shower and destroyed with water. I had my, phone taken and thrown into the toilet. Like the most craziest things that you can imagine were done. I was disrespected, belittled, spoken to condescendingly. I was sworn at on the daily, yelled at, chased, scared out of my mind. I would run and hide in the bathroom and shut the door and lock it as fast as I could because I felt like my survival depended on it. Okay, but through all of that, I told myself that, it's okay, you're just being tested. Just stay, be patient, like he'll calm down, right? Allah will reward you for all of this. Allah sees you and Allah sees my sacrifices, right? So I believed that my sacrifices would be rewarded. And I thought that going through this pain, that it made me more pious, it made me more close to Allah, it made me a wali, right? A close friend of Allah. The fact that I was going through all of this because I was always making dua, I was in distress, right? And I would think that this is what closeness to Allah looks like, right? The fact that I'm always turning to Him and I'm turning to Him with tears and I'm crying. But I was terribly, terribly wrong. And the moment that changed everything for me was when I saw my eldest son's face. When my husband or ex-husband, we were in the middle of another fight. There was another chaotic, traumatic scene, and I looked back at my son's face, who was behind me, and I saw the shock, right? He was emotionless, like flat, like he couldn't even process the emotions because it was just too much for him, and his little face was scared, right? I saw that he was there watching, in his small little body, right? And I knew at that point deep in my bones that this cannot be what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, right? This cannot be their childhood, right? They don't deserve to live a life of chaos, of misery, of pain and trauma, right? I didn't care about myself enough back then to leave for my sake, but I cared deeply for my children and I wanted the best for them. I knew that they didn't deserve this life, and I also knew that if I didn't leave, that my children could very well end up just like their father and continue this treatment, right? Because the way that children watch their parents love or not love is what they learn to be normal, right? That they're internalizing what they're watching. And so even if they have really good intentions when they get married, when they're older, eventually these patterns are going to seep their way into their marriages sooner or later, right? Sometimes it's after a pregnancy, sometimes it's right after they get married and, then they become their father, or the behaviors that they internalize as a child now become exhibited on the outside, right? Sometimes it's after they have kids, they become a father or a mother, right? Then they start repeating these patterns. Suddenly it comes out. So can't see it right away, but it inevitably comes out later, right? So I went to a female scholar at the time when I was going through this really, really down, depressed part of my life. I was living in Amman in Jordan at the time. And I reached out to this scholar. I emailed her. I said, look, I'm going through something really, really difficult. It wasn't even the abuse, actually, that I told her about right off the bat. I just said that it was something difficult and I was confused and I wanted to see her. Right? I still thought that I had to be a better wife. Like, I never blamed him. Everything was my fault. I was like, if I'm just better, if I'm more regulated, if I'm more grounded, if I just, stop pushing his buttons, then maybe we can live a conflict-free life. I still thought that I had control over the situation. So I went to her, I scheduled a meeting with her, and she told me something that I will never forget. She said, Maria, if you stay, your kids may leave Islam when they're older because of the trauma that they're experiencing. So she told me that it's gonna be painful, right? It's gonna be like ripping off the Band-Aid, right? Leaving, but you must leave. She said, remove yourself fully in one go because he's not going to change. She said, if he does change, it'll be like 20 years from now, right? And the damage would have been done. Okay? And then there was a second female scholar there. She was a marriage counselor with decades of experience. And she looked me straight in the eye and she said to me, if you go back to him, he's not hurting you. You are hurting yourself. Right? And that is when it hit me that staying was a choice that I was actively making. Whether or not I was aware of it, it was still a choice, and a very bad one. Very bad choice indeed. And I was lucky because my husband had given me a conditional triple talaq. He gave me a conditional 3 divorces, right? And in Islam, once a husband gives you 3 divorces, he can't take you back, right? You have to marry somebody else before you would ever be able to reconcile with him. So he didn't give me the 3 divorces, but he said, if you book a flight back to Canada to visit your family this year, then I triple divorce you, right? And he had already said that. And so I think he thought that I would definitely not book the flight. That's why he said it so confidently, right? But I took it. I fulfilled the condition the next morning, right after meeting with those 2 scholars, right? And I left him for the sake of Allah. I felt like Ibrahim alayhi salam when he left Hajar alayhi salam in the desert, right? That he was ordered by Allah to leave her even though he loved her dearly because Allah had told him to, right? And I felt like in that moment, and it was really scary to leave because even after I booked the flight, technically I was triple divorced right away, but I was still in the same house as him, right? So I had to wear hijab and I had to wear my abaya and I had to sleep with the kids, right? Like I had to kind of not be married to him. And the night before I left, we had guests over. So I was like in my hijab, serving the guests tea and, just trying to act normal because of course I couldn't leave with him knowing or, World War III would have broken out. So I had to, be incognito about it. And I knew that it was my time to leave. I felt like Allah was telling me that, it's enough now. You've learned the lessons and it's time to move on. And the uncertainty was terrifying for me, not knowing how I would make money, not knowing how I would be taken care of. I was in a foreign country with 2 babies that were under 2, and it took me 48 hours to fly back to Canada. But I trusted in Allah. And, my kids right now are thriving, right? They're confident, they're beaming with joy, they're excelling at school. They feel unconditional love now from both of their parents, from myself and their father, because now both of us have the energy, the emotional energy required to love them fully, to be present with them, right? Because our trauma bond is now dead. We're not focused on each other and the conflicts between us anymore. We're focused on them, on the children, right? And this is what happens when you stop confusing sabr with self-destruction. So let's go over the difference, right? What is the difference between sabr, between patience and self-destruction or self-abandonment or self-sacrifice? So remember the hadith, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that indeed your Lord has a right over you. Yourself, your nafs has a right over you. Your family has a right over you. So give each one their due right. Right? So read that again. The Prophet ﷺ said, indeed your Lord has a right over you, yourself has a right over you, and your family has a right over you. So give each one their due right. This is in Sahih al-Bukhari. Okay, yourself has a right over you. Your own self, your own nafs has a right. So it's not selfish to protect your peace. It's Islamic. It's prophetic. This is what we are taught, right? It's not un-Islamic to set boundaries. It's required to protect yourself, your own dignity, your honor, right? Allah honored you as a believer and you belong to Allah, right? You don't belong to yourself. You're an amana to yourself, right? Just like how suicide is impermissible in Islam. Why? Because you're harming Allah's creation, Allah's servant. You are His. You are not yours. Okay, you're an amana to yourself. Just like you're not allowed to harm somebody else's amana, you're also not allowed to harm yourself. You need to take care of yourself. Okay, just like you take care of your children. They are an amana. You are also your amana. Self-destruction is not patience. Self-destruction is disobedience to Allah. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want you to suffer in silence, right? He wants you to protect yourself, to set boundaries. Okay, because when you stay in situations that are not good for you, that are unhealthy and that are harming you, harming your children psychologically, right, you are destroying the beautiful system, the beautiful family system that Allah intended. So now let's talk about sabr. Let's talk about patience. What does real patience look like, right? Firstly, sabr, patience, means trusting Allah so much that you don't fear people abandoning you. You don't fear people leaving because you know that your provider, your ultimate provider is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Not your husband, not your family, not anybody else. And so you stick to Allah's system no matter what, even if it means that people leave, right? You follow Allah's system, the system that has rights. You have rights to kind treatment, okay? Number 2, second part of sabr, is setting boundaries and upholding standards while being loving and kind. Okay, so you're able to uphold standards. You're able to say, this is okay, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. All right, this is part of patience. Okay, it's part of patience. This is all included in it. All right, so you hold those standards, you set the boundaries, but you're still doing it in a loving and a kind way. All right, you're not angry, you're not bitter about it, you're not resentful. You're just clear. You're clear, you're firm, you're protected, you're boundaried. Okay, and number 3 is taking action and making dua. Right? We all know the expression, tie your camel and then make dua. Right? So this is the same thing. Sabr is not passive. It's not just make dua and wait. It's make dua and move. Right? Make dua and protect yourself in any way that you can. Protect your children if you have any. Right? Make dua and then set the boundary. Right? This is tolerable. This is intolerable. This I will accept. This I will not. Okay, and number 4 is accepting who people are, not who you imagine that they will become. Living in fantasy land, right? Imagining their potential. Maybe she'll change. Maybe he'll change. Okay, we accept people who they are. We live in reality. Okay, stop telling yourself stories about who he's going to be one day. Accept the reality of who he is right now. Okay, it's very possible that they do not change. Okay, and this is sabr. This is patience, accepting the divine decree. Okay, accepting what is real. All right, and number 5, the 5th part of patience is waiting until you have clarity before making a decision. Okay, so not to decide hastily out of anger or out of fear. All right, but you wait. You wait. You journal about it. Okay, for days, weeks, months if you have to. Okay, you pray, seek counsel, ask people for advice who are knowledgeable and who have experience specifically in marriage, people who are happy. Never take marriage advice from unhappy people. It's like number 1 rule, right? And then once you have clarity, then you can act with confidence, right? You don't decide something quickly and then wonder the next day, oh my gosh, was that the right thing? No, that means that you acted out of haste, right? You wait until the answer becomes so blaringly clear that you can't even avoid it, that you can't even deny it. Like it's so obvious at that point. So that's all what sabr is comprised of, okay? Now, self-destruction. What does self-destruction look like? Firstly, okay, a sign that you are self-destructing and not being patient, okay, firstly is that you're calling your chronic anxiety pious. All right, if you're constantly managing his emotions, other people's emotions, and you're terrified of their reaction, that is not taqwa, that is trauma. Okay, you're causing trauma and generational trauma possibly. Okay, if you have children, it's going to pass on to them because your kids can feel your anxiety no matter how hard you try to hide it and to act happy around them or try to be present and make eye contact with them. Okay, they know when you're anxious and they absorb it. Okay, they become anxious children. Okay, so chronic anxiety and being in a state of fight or flight, this is not praiseworthy. Okay, it's not pious. Number two, another sign that you are self-destructing is when you think that the more you suffer, the higher your place in Jannah will be. Right? But that's a fallacy because Allah does not want you to suffer endlessly. Okay? He wants you to be protected. Right? Remember, your self has a right over you. Right? You need to take care of yourself. And yes, it's true that Allah does test those that He loves. But if there's a fire, you do what you can to get out. Right? If you and your kids are in a fire, you get out, right? You escape. Really, you need to set limits. You need to create distance sometimes. Okay, and this is not telling you to, divorce a difficult husband. No, but sometimes a pause might be necessary, right? That you say, okay, my rights are clearly not being fulfilled, so I need some space right now, and I'm going to go back to my family. And once you're ready to fulfill my Islamic rights, then we can talk. Okay, number three, abandoning your own needs for so long that you're angry at everybody, including yourself. Okay, so deep down, you're not really angry at him, okay, or your parents, or whoever is the difficult person in your life. You are angry at yourself for not doing anything about it because you didn't have your own back, right? You didn't do what was necessary to protect yourself. And, later on, maybe a couple decades forward, when you look back, you might think, how come I didn't stand up for myself, right? I deserved to be protected. And this can happen later on with self-reflection, but, act on it now. Think about the future you now, right? Take care of yourself. Take care of your own needs. You are important. You are valued. Okay, Allah has valued you by making you a believer. All right, number four, the fourth sign of self-destruction is staying silent because you know that even if you try to speak your mind, you're going to be shut down. All right, but look at the Sahabiyat. Okay, they were never scared of speaking up because they were not oppressed. Right? They were accepted for who they were. Their authentic selves were cherished, actually. I just read a story today of Sauda bint Zam'a, radiallahu ta'ala anha, the wife of the Prophet, peace be upon him, right after Khadija, right? She was his first wife after Khadija. And once she and Aisha, they were kind of joking around together, and they took food because Sauda, radiallahu ta'ala anha, she told Aisha, radiallahu anha, that she didn't want to eat the food, that she didn't like it. So Aisha said, if you don't eat the food, then I'm going to take it and smear it on your face. And so Sauda, she didn't eat it to see what she would do, right? And then she took it and she smeared it on her face, right? And the Prophet ﷺ was there. He was watching them, and then he told Sauda, like, okay, get her back now. He said, get her back. And, so they joked around, but they were free to be themselves. They didn't have to hide their funny sides. They didn't have to, act serious all the time, right? They had this lightness about them, okay? And the Prophet ﷺ cherished who they were, right? So if you are stuck in a situation where you feel like you have to be silent, you have to put on a mask, okay, that is a sign that you are living in self-destruction, not praiseworthy patience. Okay, and the last sign, number 5, is believing that self-sacrifice is ihsan. Okay, that if you just sacrifice all your own needs, that you are from the, mashallah, the muhsinat, the people who have ihsan, and Allah loves the people who have ihsan, right? But self-sacrifice is dysfunction. Okay, you're making a household that is dysfunctional if your needs are never met. Okay, even if they're not met, sometimes your kids will catch on. Okay, it affects the entire atmosphere of the home. Ihsan, what ihsan looks like is when both of your rights are being fulfilled, right? The husband and the wife. Okay, that is the goal. Okay, and you're both going above and beyond for each other. It's equal. Okay, not you giving 100% and he's giving 10%. This is not ihsan, even on your part. Okay, it is your responsibility to make sure that you are cared for. Okay, and now why are we trying to prevent self-destruction? Okay, why not just put up with these situations? Who cares? Right? Who cares? But what happens what happens when you stay in self-destruction mode, firstly, is that you're living in isolation and loneliness. Okay, you're alone all the time because you're so focused on the conflict and de-escalating that you start spending less time with friends and other people, right? And humans are neurobiologically hardwired for connection, right? And Islamic fiqh is designed to bring about connection. But self-destruction, it kills connection. You end up lonely. Even if your house is full, you still feel alone because you're never emotionally held. You're never emotionally safe. And it's a very, very lonely experience. Okay. It drains the energy out of you, which brings me to number 2. Physical and emotional exhaustion are the consequences. Okay. You have no energy to spend on anybody else. Even your kids, it's difficult, right? And then your kids grow up emotionally alone. Okay, because they don't have you emotionally present. Kids need an emotionally present parent to feel safe so that they can develop healthily, right? And the kids can sense that something is wrong. And they will unconsciously recreate the same exact unhealthy dynamic in their own future homes. Okay, so this is why self-destruction is so important to nip in the bud. Right? Make sure your needs are cared for, right? In every relationship, not only marriage, in all your relationships, make sure that you are being fulfilled. Your kids are watching you and they repeat, okay? They watch you and they imitate. Monkey see, monkey do. You can tell them, make sure you prioritize yourself, right? Take care of yourself, eat healthy. But if they see you, right, eating, let's say, I don't know, chips every night, and then you tell them to eat healthy, they're not going to take you seriously. Similarly, if you want your children to grow up in healthy homes and to have a healthy environment for your grandchildren to grow up in, it starts with you. Okay, and number 3, the third consequence of living in chronic dysfunction and self-sacrifice, okay, self-destruction, this is huge, is spiritual stagnation. Okay, you're barely making Fajr on time. You can't worship with consistency because spirituality peaks when things are calm, okay, not in chaos. All right, spirituality is not just, reaching out to Allah in panic. Oh my gosh, help me, help me. This is a disaster. Again, like 5th time in the last 2 weeks that this has happened. That's not spirituality. Spirituality looks like consistency, right? You're working on your relationship with Allah every day because you have this inner calm. Okay, tolerating mistreatment, it ruins your relationship with Allah because just like any relationship, your relationship with Allah, it requires you to show up every day, right? And to be with Allah requires your nervous system to be at peace, right? You need peace in your life. Otherwise, you won't be able to grow spiritually. You're going to be stuck at the same level for a very, very long time. Okay, now before I mentioned the Islamic rights that you have, right? And to make sure that your rights are fulfilled, because just as we are required to help people who are oppressed, we are also required to help the oppressor by stopping them and preventing them from oppressing. Okay, and again, we have rights on our own selves to make sure that we are cared for because we don't belong to ourselves, we belong to Allah. We are an amana. We must take care for ourselves just like we care for our loved ones, just like we care for our pets. We are equally as important. Okay, so right number 1, as a wife, okay, what's the first right that a wife has? In Arabic, it's called husn al-mu'ashara. This is kind treatment, okay, that you are treated with dignity, with respect. Okay, Allah says in the Quran, live with them in kindness, right? Live with them well, live with them beautifully. Your husband must treat you with kindness, okay? He is not permitted to humiliate you, swear at you, mock you, put you down, insult you, insult your family. Okay, all of these behaviors must be nipped in the bud. Okay, like the first time they happen, obviously, if you've been married now for 5 years, it's a bad habit. Okay, it's time to set boundaries. All right, these are things that a Muslim woman should never tolerate. Why? Again, you're teaching the children, you're teaching society. Okay, imagine every household was functioning that way. How terrible of a world we would live in, and we look at things outside like the terrible, terrible war in Gaza and in Sudan, right? And all of that, it's what is it? It's chaos, right? It's chaos, it's imbalance, it's injustice. And the way that the metaphysical world works is that, one good action, one positive action on one side of the world can have a direct effect on the other side of the world, right? So when we have peace in our homes, right, if we want a peaceful world, it starts with our homes. And in order for our homes to be places of peace, to be sanctuaries, it is absolutely essential that we know how to set boundaries kindly and firmly, all right? That we never tolerate this type of treatment, okay? We have choices. We can leave. We could say, I'm going back to my parents' house. You just swore at me. This is unacceptable, and you must never do that again, okay? Especially if you want to have children or you already have children, all right? This is never, ever, ever acceptable, ever. Okay, you are causing it by you enabling that to happen. You are causing mayhem on earth. Okay, you're causing a war, or you're allowing a war to happen. Yeah, you always say, stand up to Israel, stand up to Israel, fight the oppressor. But what if there's an oppressor in your own home? Okay, what are you doing about it? Are you just letting it go, or are you going to protest? Are you going to say, this is not okay. This is not okay. You are harming me. You are harming the children. This is not okay. I will not let this happen. All right. Peace starts at home. Okay. So this is non-negotiable. Husn al is not negotiable. Right. Without this, you're going to feel resentful by being soft or submissive, right? If your husband's always like, oh, you must respect me, you must listen to me, blah, 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 but then he insults you and he puts you down and he humiliates you and makes you feel less than, okay, then being soft and submissive ain't gonna work. All right. So you may say, yeah, it's my right that you obey me. Yeah, when you're fulfilling my rights, okay, which is a right to safety in my own home. Thank you very much. All right. The whole system becomes dysfunctional when this kind treatment is missing. If he's not treating you with kindness and respect, then you are allowed, actually, you are required to set a boundary to make sure that your family is running smoothly, to make sure that your children have a healthy household to live in. Okay, this is also their home, right? If you have any pets, they can also sense dysfunction and conflict, right? Your pets want peace. Your plants, if you have any plants, they want peace too. Okay, so it is an obligation that you have these standards and uphold them. Okay, make sure that your home is a sanctuary and a peaceful one, no matter what. Okay, next, right number 2. Your second right is nafaqa. Right, this is complete financial provision. Right, there's no such thing as 50-50 in Islam. Right, even if both people are working, the husband must pay for everything that is essential. Okay, like rent, food, bills, right? Anything that is needed to live is the husband's responsibility. Okay, your money is yours. His money is the family's money. Okay, he must pay everything that is needed. Right, as I've said, the rent and the food is on him, never you. Okay, if he's not providing financially, then you pause the relationship. Okay, unless you really, really want 50-50 and you choose and you're totally okay with it and you're comfortable, even if you had to live like that for the next 20 years, you would be fine, then cool, right? But if you're not and you're slowly but surely growing in resentment, like, I shouldn't have to do this, how come this other woman is staying home and I have to work? Okay, if you're starting to feel like that resentment is creeping in, you've got to, again, nip it in the bud, take it out, right? Set your standard. Okay, pause the relationship. All right, just be like, this isn't working for me. Okay, find another home, go back to your family, whatever you can do. He doesn't have access to you anymore. He doesn't live with you. Okay, simple as that, because men get really, really comfortable. All right, they don't do anything that's not required of them to do. Okay, I'm not saying you have to divorce him just because he lost his job. Absolutely not. Okay, and obviously, if he's working, but then he loses his job and there's like this time period where things are tough, then to help out, that's okay for a time if you want to. But it's, first of all, it's not required. And second of all, you don't want to let it become a pattern. Okay, because like I said, men get lazy. All right, they get lazy. They don't do more than what's required. And if you give them all the husband benefits without him providing for you, he's going to continue living that way. All right. It's easy for him to do. And once you go, once he realizes that access to you is not unconditional and it's not you making it that way, it's Allah made it that way, right? Allah gave you these rights for a reason. Okay. And if they're not being upheld, then there needs to be consequences. And he will learn very, very quickly how to make money if he cares about you, if he cares about his status, his reputation, okay, which all men do. Okay, if he cares about making things work and he's ready to take accountability and be a leader, a qawwam, okay, he's going to find a way, right, when you put the boundary in place. Okay, and your right number 3, right? Your third right is the right to intimacy, to be and feel sexually fulfilled. Okay, sexless marriages are not Islamic at all. Okay, you have a right to feel desired. Okay, you have a right to sexual fulfillment. Without this, your femininity disappears, right? You're going to start feeling like a man because you're not being desired at home by your husband who is supposed to be desiring you. Like, that is part of his job. The entire atmosphere of the house then becomes negative, right? And the kids can sense it because you're not in your fitrah, because he isn't making you feel like that woman that he made you feel at the beginning of the marriage. You're not feeling it anymore, and so it's going to affect your aura, it's going to affect your energy, right? And a woman's femininity, it comes out when she is safe in the relationship, and that's what Allah wants, right? Because Allah wants her to be in her fitrah, but it's impossible to be in your feminine energy if your husband is not making you feel desired. Okay, and now you may ask, why do I have to uphold my rights, right? Why does this even matter? Okay, and it's because when you give up your rights, you're not being pious, right? You're not following Allah's divine order, his system. You're breaking Allah's perfect system. Boundaries, setting boundaries is what allows everybody in the home to feel respected and to feel respectable, right? Including your husband, right? No husband wants to be an oppressor. No husband wants to be mean and this terrible husband. Like, what happens usually when these habits last for a long, long time, right? Years, and he belittles her, or he doesn't give her any sexual fulfillment, and she's lost her femininity, and the whole house becomes negative. What happens is the husband starts disappearing more, going out with his friends, and trying to get away because he doesn't feel like a respectable person in his home. Okay, and so you setting boundaries is not only for your own respect, but also for his. Okay, and that's why when women set boundaries, a lot of the time, unless the man is like really unhealthy, he appreciates it. Right? He's happy about it because he likes to be someone who is formidable and respectable and honorable and noble, right? Men love status, and what gives them high status is having a functional family. So when you set boundaries and you set the standards for the home, okay, it helps everybody, not just you. And that's why setting boundaries is not selfish, right? You're helping the entire family. Right? And so now the question that everybody asks is, okay, well, if I have these issues in my marriage, should I stay or should I go? All right, so I'm going to go through when to stay and then when to pause or go. So stay in a relationship. It's good to stay in a relationship. It's healthy to stay in the relationship. This is ideal, okay, if your Islamic rights are being fulfilled, even if it's imperfect, right? He's going to make mistakes, or like I said, if he loses a job and there's a bit of instability for a while, okay, this is normal, this is expected, right? So as long as he's doing his best, right? He knows what your rights are, and he's making sure to the best of his ability that he is taking care of you. All right. Number two, he's receptive to change and accountability, right? That when you say, okay, this is not okay, right? That he listens to you. He doesn't just brush it off. Okay. Stay when there's no abuse, that he's not belittling you. He's not shaming you. Okay. He's not swearing at you. That's a very, very important one, right? You don't want your boys to grow up and then start swearing at their wives later on. Okay, stay if you can set boundaries and he respects them, even like eventually, right? Because all men, like most of the time, they're resistant to change and boundaries at first, but eventually they kind of, when they realize that you're serious, then they accept them. Okay, and stay if your sabr and your patience is bringing you closer to Allah. Okay, if he being patient with him, for the small things, or even sometimes there might be big things, right? Like betrayal in some way, or a big financial disaster, something happens, right? But you still feel like you have that inner peace intact. Okay, then staying is being patient, right? But when you should pause the relationship or go, or even ask for divorce, okay, it's your choice, right? It depends how long things have been going on, but you have to set boundaries, either pause or leave if your Islamic rights are being violated consistently. Okay, month after month, you've told him, okay, I'm not comfortable working, or this isn't working, or I don't feel desired, I'm not sexually fulfilled. Okay, and then he doesn't do anything about it, right? He'll sleep with you once and then nothing for like 3 weeks. Okay, and if he's unwilling to change, right? This is when you need to kind of pause, show him that you're not to be taken for granted. Okay, if he's unwilling to change, or he gaslights you, you tell him what's wrong, and he, says, no, you're imagining things, and oh, you're so ungrateful. Like, I just slept with you a month ago. Like, maybe that's not enough for you, right? Or you can also go if there's abuse of any kind, or if your boundaries are met with escalation and anger, okay, or if your patience is destroying your health, right? Your physical health, you're sick all the time with no reason, okay? Your patience, or what you think is patience, is literally killing you from the inside out. And also if he's taking no action to change, okay? So promises don't count. Men, they show us what is truly inside of them by what they do, not what they say, right? The promise doesn't cost anything. So yeah, I'm going to change. Yeah, I'll work on it. Okay, but if he's taking no action, all right, then it might be time to go, just so that he realizes that his actions have consequences, right? Just like how we show our kids that, if you do this, this is the consequence. Sometimes men need the same thing. Okay, and leaving doesn't mean divorce. Right? So again, I'm not saying, oh, divorce him because he's getting upset at your boundaries. No. Right? At first, of course, if there's change, and he's gonna get upset, right? But eventually, like I said, after he sees that you're consistent and you're serious about it, that he's gonna have to accept it if he wants you in your life. But again, this comes from knowing your value, right? Knowing that you deserve kind treatment. You deserve to have your rights fulfilled. Allah set these rights for you. Okay, so again, just when there is something huge that is being done to you, right? A pause or a separation or a reset can be the action that your husband will understand, right? I used to watch videos by Michelle Weiner Davis. She's known as the divorce buster, preventing divorce. And even she said that sometimes a man only changes when he sees that his wife is actually taking concrete action, right? So even me, I saw another wife like a couple of years ago, and her husband was not fulfilling her rights in a way, and she went back to her family just for a few months, and he saw that she was serious, and then he changed, right? So sometimes boundaries can work. They can reset the marriage and make sure that when you get back together, it's beautiful and it's functional. Because men want good marriages just like we do, okay? But a lot of the time it's in our control, because if he's working and he's not really focusing on the relationship as much as we are, then it's on us to ensure that it runs smoothly. And part of that is knowing when to set boundaries, when to take distance, when to, or what standards you must uphold. Okay, this is our responsibility as the woman. Okay, and remember that men don't listen to words. Okay, so it's not about just telling him, change this, don't do that, don't do that. Okay, sometimes action is required. Okay, this is a language that men understand very well. Okay, actions. And sometimes relationships need pauses, right? It's just like a reset button. So now I'm going to share some stories of clients that I've had. My first client, she was a woman who waited 7 years. Okay, she waited 7 years for this man to love her back. Okay, she was exclusive to him. She never got married to him, but she felt like, okay, I am loyal to him. He's the love of my life. And, she did everything for him. She prepared food. She acted like a wife, even though he hadn't even taken her in a nikah. Right? She thought that she could earn his love and she would show him how valuable she is just by doing more. Okay, and what ended up happening? He left her. Okay, he discarded her while she was begging him to choose her, leaving 20 voicemails, right? Saying, no, please, let's make it work. Okay, why did he leave her? Because men don't act for women that they don't need to earn. Okay, it's men that have to prove to us that they are worth our time and attention. Okay, self-sacrifice does not bring more love from your man. It brings more misery, okay, to yourself. Okay, and no man wants to be with a miserable woman, right? One who's always giving, giving, giving. Like, men naturally want to be the givers. Okay, we just need to make sure that they are in their fitra, in their masculinity, right? That they are giving this to us. And if they don't, well, then we pull back, right? We create distance. Yeah, I had another client. She was almost divorced, right? She told me that she wanted to divorce her husband, and it was because he never stood up for her to his family. When they would put her down or, say something mean, he wouldn't say anything to them. Okay, but with coaching, she realized that her husband simply didn't have the capacity. He wasn't able to stand up to them, not even for himself. Okay, so she set a boundary with his family, and she would only meet them twice a year. And her husband agreed, which saved her marriage. Imagine, she set one boundary that saved her marriage, right? So firstly, she accepted it. Remember, part of patience is accepting people for who they are. So she accepted that he doesn't have the capacity to stand up for her. Like, he can't even stand up to them for himself. So how is he going to do it for her? Okay. And by setting the boundary of just controlling how often they see her or how much access they get to her, because these are things that are in our control, right? How much access people get to us and how they're able to access us, right? I have family members who can only reach me by email, and I'll answer them happily and joyfully, but they won't get a phone call from me because I decide how people access me in order to keep my inner peace. And the more inner peace I have, the better the relationship will be. Okay, so here's where we are. Now you know the difference between the sabr and self-destruction. You know your Islamic rights. You know the decision framework, how to decide whether to stay or go. But knowing and doing are two different things. So if you're struggling with this, and if you need personalized support to actually implement what we spoke about today, I have a few coaching spots open. And Happy Coaching is where you get a personalized roadmap for your situation specifically. You get strategic guidance because I can see patterns that you're not able to see. Nervous system regulation tools. You get the complete Heartful Awakening Plant methodology. And right now I'm running a 40% off sale through January 5th. So the code is Heartful40. For a single session, it's 96 Canadian dollars. 4 sessions, 372. 8 sessions, 720. Okay, this is the lowest the prices have ever been and will ever be. Okay, so the link is in the show notes. If you're ready, then book now. The seal ends January 5th at midnight. A final word for you. Your own self has a right over you. So protect yourself, set boundaries, and trust Allah. And if you need help doing that, I'm here for you. Until the next time, may Allah grant you peace, clarity, and the courage to honor yourself. Until next time, stay heartful.